Rodriguez, and there is my university email. Okay, so a quick overview. Of course, the introduction. How do we learn? Learning styles. A little bit on note-taking, tutoring, and mentorship, which I would recommend to all of you if you need it. And of course, probably the most important one of growing up and being an adult, time management. I think we all can attest to that. Um, okay, so since we have a smaller group today, we'll just go ahead and do this with the whole group, but think pair share. So what helps you learn when you are in the classroom? This could include your learning strategies or your teacher's teaching style. So who wants to help answer this first question? I can go first. Um, when I'm in the classroom here at the university level, what helps me the most is when my professor is actually enthusiastic about the work he or she teaches. I've had teachers in the past, and of course professors in the past too, who, although they were very qualified and very good, in general teachers, the lack of enthusiasm for me just made it a lot less interesting. Um, but when I do have that kind of excitement kind of being thrown towards me, it makes me more excited to be part of the class. So for me, that's really good. Any other preferences? All right, next question. Oh, did someone just? No. Oh, someone did. Something that helps me learn is a clear presentation. Very good. Me too, actually. Now, Carol, when you say presentation, do you mean like a visual representation or a verbal presentation?
I think both, depending on what the topic is. Like if it's math, for instance, if it's
Hmm,
being written on the board and gone through step by step, that's a different sort of presentation than you might have if you were talking about like a different topic where you could probably do some of those slides in advance. But if it's clear, then that really helps because you can take notes and it's easier to like listen and stuff. So um, just clearness with whatever way that they decide that they're going to teach a subject.
very cool. And I agree, actually. Star says, mine would be additional examples on the specific topic. I think visual helps me learn better. Yeah, I think so too, Star. I think if kind of like using the math idea, when it comes to math, I need to hear it. I need to hear the verbiage and the words. I'm less privy when it comes to visual learning, when it comes to things like math and physics and science. For me, the biggest thing is, can I understand the words you're saying? And then turn that into numbers, letters, whatever it might be. But in terms of like frameworks, theoretical frameworks, ideas, philosophy, the visual is really useful for me in that regard. Okay, next question. What strategies have you found most helpful when studying for a test? I know we all can probably provide some sort of example for this one. Feel free to write it if you don't want to say it out loud. I can go ahead and go first again this time. When I have a really daunting exam, a kind of a scary exam coming up, what I like to do the day before, or I should say days in advance, is sit down and map out the entirety of what I learned during that unit and what's going to be on the exam. If I can map it out and have like a connection of ideas and thoughts, then I know I can explain the material to somebody else, and therefore I've learned it well. Let's see, what did Star say? Reviewing topics again right before the test or doing practice tests. Yep, practice tests are always good too. I think that's a very good one. I think most university professors I've had allow practice. They post old exams sometimes, so that's a good one. Carol says studying with others to review. That can be a very good one. I did have one bad experience though with the group studying because we just got distracted and ate snacks the whole time. Cody says allowing myself to create a study guide and reviewing any related material. Yep, very solid. I use that a lot for Cody, if you remember Dr. Pettygrove's class. I don't know if you took that class, but there was just so much information. I had to like create study guides. Um, but yeah, I liked her though. She was a cool professor. Okay. Anyone else?
This is something that I learned from the think tank, and I've tried to do it, but it does have to do with time management, is breaking up whatever the content is supposed to be for the exam, and like doing it in this section and then another section and another section.
Mhm.
And so it's not like you're overwhelming yourself in one day with trying to um remember everything. But yeah, that has to do with time management too, because
Yeah.
sometimes that's how it is.
Yeah, and sometimes you're not willing to I mean, like if you have 7 days to study for an exam, are you really gonna go 1 hour a day, or are you gonna wait till the last minute, right? So it's just one of those things where you have to like convince yourself to get going. Um, Ben says, writing everything out on a whiteboard works for me. I can find out what I know and I don't know. Very good, Ben. I think that's similar to my idea of like mapping everything out on a piece of paper or in my head, and can I remember all the important details, blah blah blah. Very good. That's a very good one. Okay, and it looks like Brooke just joined. Good to have you, Brooke. We're just answering some intro questions. And finally, the last question. Outside of school, what is one interesting way that you learn? For me, outside of school, I do a lot of classical music. And if anyone has ever studied music or is classically trained, you know that it's a very kind of specific way of learning, and it's a lot different than regular classroom learning. So what I do is I like to kind of learn things by ear sometimes. And what that means is you listen to a piece of music, and before you even look at the sheet music, you just try to see if you can get it on the instrument. And that kind of trains your ear. And before you know it, you can say the name of a note just by hearing it. Um, of course, I'm still working on that myself. But that's one interesting way, kind of an experimental way of learning. Star says, I learned great through YouTube tutorials, whether related to academics or crafts. Star, I think you just described every college student's life. I mean, YouTube is like my religion, man. If I can't understand something, I will go to YouTube. So, yeah, very good. Good one. I think Carol agrees.
Yes, listening to things like passively sometimes
Mhm.
helps. Like if I'm cleaning, then I'll listen to a video or a lecture, even like an audiobook or something that's related to the topic. So yeah, I think that videos help too because sometimes um, the people on YouTube can explain it in a way that clicks for you that might not have been a way that was discussed in class. So I do agree.
Fantastic. And so, oh yeah, okay, crafts, yeah. Yeah, big time. Cooking too. I use YouTube tutorials for cooking. I haven't burned the house down yet, but maybe I will one of these days. Alrighty, on to the next slide. Oh, animations. Okay, learning. So, of course, a quote from the wonderful, illustrious Dr. Seuss, the more that you read, the more things you will know. The more that you learn, the more places you'll go. When I graduated from undergrad, my nana got me a cup with that quote on it. So I always think of her when I see that quote. But it's true, a very true quote. Okay, how do we learn? So, according to the Oxford Dictionary, learning is the acquisition of knowledge or skills through experience, study, or being taught. And this here is an example of Kolb's learning cycle. If you decide to take psych for undergrad, you will learn about this. So, experiencing, reflecting on the experience, thinking about the reflection, acting, and then the cycle, of course, then repeats. This is something that you probably are all familiar with because we all, as humans, do it every day. Okay, Learning to Learn by Marianne Nestor. This is a video. I will see if I can load it up for you guys. Can you all see the screen, the YouTube video loading, or do you guys only see the PowerPoint?
I see the video.
You see the video? Excellent. Okay, I'll play it. Can you hear it?
Audio doesn't seem to be coming through, and then if you want to put it full screen, you can also do that, of course. But the audio wasn't shared. It didn't seem like.
Oh boy. Okay. Let's see. I'll stop the share real quick.
Mhm.
And there should be a way to share audio as well, from what I remember.
Yeah, when you go to share again, I think share options, you'll see it on the right-hand side, I believe.
Share sound.
Mhm.
Okay, there we go. So do you still see the video again?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. And
Learner. It wasn't
Yes.
because I was lazy or unmotivated. I was a poor learner because I didn't know how to learn effectively. I thought I was learning when I wrote out the information I was trying to learn over and over. I thought I was learning when I memorized facts on flashcards the night before the test. I thought I was learning when I stayed up half the night studying for the exam. But I was not learning, I was getting by. And despite very good grades, I didn't retain much. Now, after all these years, I have learned how to learn. Research shows that sleep and exercise are important for creativity and learning. Now, instead of staying up half the night studying, I get plenty of rest. I study for about 25 minutes, then I take a break and walk around the block or do jumping jacks by my desk. Although rest is important to learning, so is being focused. I turn off my email and other distractions while I am trying to learn. Research shows that a distracted mind is not actually focused, and multitasking is a fallacy. Who knew? I used to highlight areas I wanted to remember. Now I know that if I highlight more than a sentence for each paragraph, I'm kidding myself. I should only highlight the most important concepts from the text. Highlighting doesn't help me learn. Recalling the important concepts and key ideas helps me learn. Speaking of recall, instead of passively reading the material I am trying to learn, I recall or teach myself what I have just read out loud. Or I write it down as if I'm explaining it to someone else, like I'm doing here. If I can explain the material to others or to myself, I am on my way to learning the material. I learned that cramming doesn't work. I now know to start early and practice for several days, just like an athlete building muscles. Those muscles didn't appear the day before the competition. Research shows that repetition hardwires our brain and helps us to remember. But to take hold in my brain, I must spread out my learning over several days. Our brains can only take so much at one time, especially mine. I can't expect to learn something new by trying to grasp everything at once. The path to learning a new skill or subject happens little by little. Learning requires me to chunk information. A chunk is an amount of information pieced together through meaning or use. So if I want to learn how to become a chef, I need to know how to do many things. Slicing and dicing vegetables is one of them. Once I have mastered slicing and dicing, I have learned a chunk required to becoming a chef. Chunking the information is great for bits and pieces, but to be able to bring all the chunks together, research shows I will learn better if I try more than one technique in order to thoroughly understand the information. This is called interleaving. For example, if I wanted to learn a specific style of painting, I may read books by experts, travel to the museum, watch videos, and take a class. Learning isn't just for the rising stars. Learning is for everyone. And now that I have learned how to learn, learning is for me.
All right. So that's the end of the video. I actually think I recognize that speaker. All right. So are we back on the presentation now?
Not
For
yet.
anyone with dementia, do
Oh,
not drink
yes.
warm
Oh,
water. Did you know that memory
hold on a
loss is
second.
not a condition of the mind? Most people don't know this, but the real reason behind Alzheimer's and dementia.
Oops, I fell for the old teacher thing where they let the YouTube video keep going and it goes on to the next video. Gosh, I never thought that would be me. I'm getting old. Lord have mercy. Okay, so Now that we're back on the presentation, let's get going. So, learning styles. What's your learning style? So, there are kind of four standard ways in which we think learning can happen. We have the visual, which we talked about earlier. We have the auditory, the hands-on or kinesthetic way of learning, and of course, reading and writing. So, for those of you that are visual learners, some common traits. You prefer to learn through sight. You understand information better when presented visually, organized and focused, vivid imaginations. You prefer to read instructions rather than hear them. You excel at spelling and handwriting. You make to-do lists, and you enjoy presentations and visual demonstrations. And for those types of people, here are some study tips. Use colors to categorize information. Highlighters are your best friend, and I like to use those. Make practice exams for yourself, draw pictures, make flashcards, create graphs and charts, make outlines, and rewrite key points from your notes. So I wouldn't necessarily consider myself a visual learner in the most classic sense, but a lot of these study tips that they mention here in their presentation, we talked about earlier, and they're all very good. So raise your hand via Zoom or put an emoji if you think you are a visual learner. Cody raised his hand. Ben says he thinks so too. Star as well. Rudy as well. And Cece too. Wow, we got a lot of visual learners here. Yeah, a lot of my friends and a lot of my colleagues also seem to agree that they're visual learners. I think it's a very common thing. It could also be that some of these methods here are just really good methods in general. So no matter what kind of learning style you have, you can probably use them. And it looks like, okay. Alrighty, going on to the next slide. Auditory learners. So some common traits. Prefer to learn through listening, good at explaining things out loud, enjoy public speaking, follow verbal directions well, excellent storytellers, may enjoy listening to podcasts or audiobooks instead of reading. So that's a really true one as well. And I think I myself kind of fall into this category just a little bit more than maybe some of the other ones. And then of course some study tips. You find a study group / partner and practice out loud. Record class lectures, listen to music while you study, lyric free, right? It's easy, like you just put some Mozart on in the background and just study for hours. Participate in class discussions and read assignments and notes out loud. So, Cece, did you have a question or is your hand just raised from the last example? Oh, it's gone. Okay, so raise your hands, put an emoji, or in the chat. Do you think you might be an auditory learner? I think for me, I'm probably more of an auditory learner. Let's see, did anyone else raise their hand? Hi, Mia. Glad you joined us. I might be the only one who's slightly more auditory. Oh, wait, someone chatted something. Carol says, I think I am, but I'm not sure. I want to hear the others first. Yeah, good point, because you might be more than one, too. You could be like a hybrid of a bunch of different ones. All right, going on to the next slide. Hands-on learners. So, common traits. You learn the best through touch, movement, and space. You learn the best by doing rather than observing. You excel in activities that involve performing. Athletes, actors, dancers, musicians, etc. Enjoy repair work, sculpting, art, and or working with tools. You often wiggle, tap their feet, or move their legs while sitting, have a hard time sitting still. You know, this one might actually be me after all. Some study tips if you're like this. Use fidget toys while you study. Create flashcards. Cut charts or diagrams apart and put them in order like a puzzle. Create movements or hand gestures for terms when you study. Walk as you practice / study material. Create study games and play it with somebody else. So I think I might be a little bit of this one and the auditory. Who knows? Raise your hand if you think you might have a little bit more of this in your brain. I'm probably somewhere there too. Rudy raises his hand. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I know for me too, Rudy. I like to just like do things and practice things. I think it would make sense given that I like music so much. That's probably plays a role. Alrighty, we'll go on to the next slide. I think we have one more learning style. Reading/writing preferences, which is another good one. So common traits. Learn best through reading and writing. Enjoy taking notes and making lists. Learn best by reading and rereading textbooks, handouts, and notes. Do well with multiple choice and essay tests. Learn best by writing and rewriting information. Very organized and takes accurate notes. So I don't know. I do not take accurate notes. So some tips. Write out words repeatedly. Read notes repeatedly. Rewrite ideas and principles in your own words. Organize diagrams, graphs, charts, etc. into words. Write out exam answers and explain why you chose the answer. So who thinks that they might be a little bit more this type of learner? And it's okay if you've already risen your hand because I think I see myself in all four of these, to be fair. So there's not one that's maybe more than the other. I think they might be all a little bit equal, to be honest. Oh, so no one likes writing or reading. I will say, oh, CC might actually kind of sort of be in that realm. It's hard to choose, right? Exactly. That's the point. I think kind of you have multiple different ways you might learn. Yeah, Cece says this one really works for her, and Carol says I like parts of each of these examples. Right, exactly. I don't know if I had to if someone said you have to choose, I don't know if I'd be able to pick one because there's some good things and some maybe less good things for someone like me, and I think it's different for everybody, right? So, like for example, notes. I don't even take notes in class. They don't work for me. So let's go on to the next slide. So, tips for success. Note taking. Speaking of notes, write the main points and key facts. Don't overdo it. Do not try to write down everything word for word. Paraphrase and use your own words. This is a really good tip for university and college, because professors like to go fast, and they do go fast. And it's very, very rare that they will stop and go back for you just to take notes. So definitely a really important one. Ask questions. Ask your teacher to repeat themselves when necessary, and ask questions when you need something clarified. You can always ask a professor to clarify something. They ordinarily always will. And then compare. Compare your notes to your assignments, textbooks, and with your classmates. Add to your notes as needed. And of course, organize. Keep your notes for each subject in one place. Rewrite messy notes when needed, and use highlighters for vocab, words, dates, formulas, and etc. Organization is a big, big part of learning, and I think especially when it comes to note taking. So we have a little slide here on core noun notes. Raise your hand, type in the chat. Have you guys heard of core noun notes before? I certainly have. Ben says yes. Carol says yes. Cece says yes. Star says yes. Mia, everyone says yes. We all know what core noun notes are. Um, Now, keep those emojis up. Do you like core noun notes? Do you guys like to use core noun notes? Ben says yes. Mia says yes. I'm not really so sure about these ones. Um, I think, well, let's talk about them first. Brooke said no. Yeah, I agree, Brooke. So core noun notes, the note-taking area, kind of the little white part here, right? My little mouse here, the white part, where you record your notes from the lecture. Remember to paraphrase. The Q column. As you're taking notes, keep the Q column empty. Soon after the lecture, summarize the key facts and main points in the column, vocab words, important dates, formulas, etc. Summarize. Summarize each page of your notes in 1 to 2 sentences. I remember when I was in middle school, they introduced core notes for the first time. And I think the reason they did that was because they wanted to prepare us for high school. But once you're in high school, and especially in college, setting up your notes like this every single day and then like doing the thing, I think it becomes a little bit less realistic. And I think given that everyone learns in different ways, it's probably not for everybody. It certainly isn't for me. But it is a good method nonetheless if you're someone who needs to take notes. Alrighty, next slide. Tutoring and mentorship, another crucial part of the university experience. So, tutoring, extra academic learning that supports those who may need extra help on a subject from a more experienced person. Mentorship, tutoring or helping a fellow student study and learn the classic materials. Teaching others is a great way to learn. I mentioned that earlier. And of course, finally, study groups. A small group of people who regularly meet to review class material, encourages students to work together and ask questions. So tutoring is actually really good. When I was an undergraduate student, I actually tutored people for some of my classes, and you can actually get hired here on campus by, I think, I'm not quite so sure if it's the SALT Center, but there used to be an organization on campus where you could apply and get paid to tutor people in your own class, which is really, really cool. The think tank, yes, thank you, Carol. That's the name of it. The think tank. They also do offer tutoring as well. And I think it usually comes with a charge, but I think if you're on scholarship or something like that, they have different rates. But the think tank is a really good resource on campus if you need tutoring, or if you want to tutor yourself. And then of course, mentorship and study groups are really good too. The only problem with groups sometimes is you get distracted and you might end up watching a movie instead of studying. I have experience in that realm, of course. All right, next slide. Time management. So you have planners and calendar apps. Start your assignments early and don't procrastinate if you can help it. Eliminate distractions, work on one thing at a time, and set goals for yourself. So raise your hand in Zoom if you use a planner or calendar apps. I certainly I certainly use calendar apps. I have to. Rudy raises his, I know, yeah, Rudy, Carol. I know three of us, Rudy, Carol, me. We of course we have to. Star says she does. Brooke says she does. Yeah, there's a lot of really awesome ones that are free. I think Outlook has a free version too. Google Calendar also has a free version as well. And Carol had just said, oh, for group studying is free, but individual wasn't. It was cool. My math tutor was another native person. She got me through calculus. Yep, I actually think that a lot of the group studying are actually is for math. Funnily enough, I think a lot of it ends up being calculus. Um, but as for time management, don't be afraid to fire up a calendar app because boy, when you get into college, there's going to be a million different things on your calendar. I get to the point now where I actually have to schedule hanging out with friends and getting dinner with friends because I will forget if I don't schedule it. Okay, next slide. Resources. So, of course, we always want to kind of advertise this website to you guys. Startnow.arizona.edu kind of gives you some of the basics information about getting into the U of A, paying for college, the plan, the classes to do in high school. If you guys go to any other EAO events, you will of course have heard about this stuff, and we've talked about it here in NASEP before as well. But here's the website. Feel free to screen cap it, use it for whatever you think might be a good idea. And thank you, Carol. She put the link in the chat. And also in Spanish too. We have it in Spanish.
I'll mention too that this website just recently got revamped. So it used to kind of almost look exactly as what is on the screen here, but should look differently now. And I think has a lot more information, not just about the college planning side, but also about like once you come onto campus, things that students should be thinking about and considering. And even though like the site has been set up with a lot of University of Arizona examples, I think that if you're going to another college or university, it might give you kind of hints or things to kind of look for at another college that might not be the exact same thing. And as Carol mentioned, at the University of Arizona, there's a think tank that does tutoring. If I go to another university, I'm not going to find necessarily the think tank, But it's very likely that they will have some type of tutoring services. It could go by a different name, that's perfectly fine. But the important thing is kind of knowing that there's tutoring support there. Hopefully, if you visited the site, hopefully it's been helpful in the past. But I will say that it's just been revamped, and I think that it has more information now than it had in the past. So hopeful students will visit it and also maybe share it with their parents as well.
Yep. Thank you, Rudy, for that. I hadn't known that it was updated. That's good to hear. Good to know. Alrighty. And of course, here's some reminders. Carol, I did make this slide before we made the change. Is that still accurate? Excellent. So our final NASEP banquet will be on Saturday, May 3rd at 11 a.m. It will be in ENR2, which is a building here on campus, here, of course, in Tucson, Arizona. Now, the only thing I didn't get, Carol, was the room number. Do we have that officiated yet?
I'll share that information out in an email with like maps and parking and all that stuff, so folks will know. It'll have similar information as what was shared when we had our kickoff banquet at the um, stadium. So I'll have pictures and different things like that. But off the top of my head, I can't remember the name of the room, so I'll be sure to share that out.
All right, perfect. And then we do have one more slide, which is a reminder to all of you in NASEP, reminders. If you did not participate in a science fair or haven't planned to present your project, you will have the option of presenting to us, NASEP supervisors instead. So myself, Rudy, Carol, maybe Cody, maybe Sophia. You can also present to your science class or in another public space. Just let us know. We can also I think Carol, you'd mentioned one student one time recorded themselves giving a presentation to their class. I think we can also do something along those lines as well. But if you do want to present to us, that is an option if you didn't do a science fair yet. And let's see. Okay, cool. So that, my friends, is the end of this presentation. Thank you all for coming. I know that we had a lot of science fair stuff the past couple of meetings. But next week, actually, we're going to have a student who I believe was in NASEP in high school and who is now a U of A freshman. Is that correct, Carol? And so we were wondering, do any of you, as NASEP high schoolers, not next week, but the week after, yes, or not next week, but the next, yes, thank you, Carol. Geez, the next workshop, not next week, the next workshop. But we were wondering if any of you, as high schoolers still, have any questions for someone who's now a freshman. You can let us know now, and we'll write them down, and we'll have her name's Emily. We'll have her take a look at those before she does our next workshop. Do any of you have any questions you would like us to pass on to her about anything? Anything college related?
Yeah, feel free to put them in the chat. Emily is, as Sam said, a freshman. She participated in NASEP last year. She also did like the science fairs, and because of that, she was inspired to seek out research opportunities when she came to college.
Mhm.
And so right now she's with a program with the College of Engineering where she's doing undergraduate research, and wanted to talk about like how to get involved with something like that, um, practice best practices, and then also her transition from being a high school student to a new college freshman. And so I know that we've been on all of these calls and have provided our perspective, but all of us are graduate students, and so recognize that Emily is closer to you all's demographic, and there might be some things that you want to know in terms of her experiences or her perspective. So if there's anything in the chat, or you can put questions in the chat and we can share those questions with her so that in her presentation at the next workshop, which is April 15th, she can incorporate that in. And if there aren't questions you have right now, you can also message them to me on Slack, but we'll just take a few moments right now, if you have any questions, feel free to put it in. So right now there is one.
Oh, thank you, Star. Carol, do you want me to save those, or are you gonna like copy and paste them somewhere?
I can save them. I think that
Okay.
when we end the meeting, I get
Oh, the transcript. Yeah.
mhm.
And just so you guys know, I mean, people always ask me this question, like especially high schoolers when I go to presentations, they ask me, what's the difference between a graduate student and an undergraduate student? So when you first start off your 4 years at any college and you're getting your bachelor's degree or the equivalent of that, that's undergraduate school. And usually that's 4 years, and then you get your bachelor's of whatever you study. And then, if you're crazy enough to go beyond that and do more school, like myself, and Carol, of course, and the rest of us, Cody as well, and Rudy, who got a master's degree, you can go to graduate school. And it's kind of in the name, graduate school, school for graduates, right? So you can do your master's degree, you can do law school, medical school, PhD, your doctorate degree. And there's all kinds of different doctoral degrees at different universities. So I myself am a graduate student, and I'm in my second year of my master's. So I think having perspective from someone who is currently an undergraduate freshman will be really good for you guys as you're all kind of moving into the university level. So just kind of FYI, everyone knows the difference. Alrighty. Ordinarily at this time we would have a kind of like a workshop thing for science projects. For those of you that have already completed your science projects and have already done science fairs, you're free to go. However, those of you who are still working on them or still have questions, please feel free to stay, and we can of course workshop with you all. Thank you all for coming.